Hello there, it's Sean Hampsey again with part 5 of the Bobby Sands story and Letter from the Maze. There comes a time when a cup of endurance runs over and men are no longer willing to be plunged into the abyss of despair. I hope, sir, you can understand our legitimate and unavoidable impatience. You express a great deal of anxiety over our willingness to break laws. This is certainly a legitimate concern, since we so diligently urge people to obey the Geneva Convention and the laws set in place by that noble body, particularly those laws that emphasize the legitimate right of all peoples for the right of freedom of speech, religion, and the pursuit of happiness, and the right to be free within the confines of your own country. At first it may seem rather paradoxical for us consciously to break laws. One may well ask, how can you advocate breaking some laws and obeying others? The answer lies in the fact that there are two types of laws, just and unjust. I would be the first to advocate obeying just laws, for I in my rebellion and my youth know and realize we all must have laws to govern the balance of society and life. One has not only a moral responsibility to obey just laws, conversely, one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. I would agree with St. Augustine that an unjust law is no law at all. Now, what is the difference between the two? How does one determine whether a law is just or unjust? A just law is a man-made code that squares with a moral law or the law of God. An unjust law is a code that is out of harmony with the moral law. To put it in terms of St. Thomas Aquinas, an unjust law is a human law that is not rooted in eternal law and natural law. Any law that usurps human personality is unjust. All segregation statutes are unjust because segregation of a people one from another distorts the soul and damages the personality. It gives the segregator a false sense of inferiority. Segregation, to use the terminology of the Jewish philosopher Martin Buber, substitutes an I-it relationship for an I-thou relationship and ends up regulating persons to the status of things. Hence, segregation is not only politically, economically, and sociologically unsound, it is morally wrong and sinful. To those God-fearing, church-going Northern Irish Protestants who still think we should be segregated by a man-made border, Paul Tillich has said that sin is segregation. Is not segregation an existential expression of man's tragic separation, his awful estrangement, his terrible sinfulness? Thus it is that I can urge men and women to disobey the man-made law that divides us as a nation, that carves a border of separation through this beautiful and great nation of ours, that divides us as brothers and sisters, denying our Protestant brethren the lovely heritage that is theirs as well as ours. These divisive laws are morally wrong. Sometimes a law is just on its face value and unjust in its application. For instance, when I was a teenager, I was arrested for gathering in an unlawful group with the intent to parade without a permit. Now, there's nothing wrong in having an ordinance which requires a permit for a parade, but such an ordinance becomes unjust when it is used to maintain segregation and to deny citizens the privilege of peaceful assembly and protest. I hope you can see the distinction I'm trying to point out. In no sense do I advocate evading or defying the law, as would the rabid segregationist. that would lead to anarchy. One who breaks an unjust law must do so openly, lovingly, and with a willingness to accept the penalty. I submit that an individual who breaks a law that conscience tells him is unjust and who willingly accepts the penalty of imprisonment in order to arouse the consciousness of the community over its injustice is in reality expressing the highest respect for the law.